What's next? He's brought to us by Landis Block. Create your very own jaw-dropping backyard paradise online at landisbc.com. From ESPN, the great Adam Schefter joins us. Shefty, good morning.
Good morning, guys. Who was upset with the media? Which player?
So Darius Slay, and we're going to get into this with you. Darius Slay was on Micah Parsons' podcast the other day, and they started talking about Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who was having a beef with Micah Parsons. So kind of a weird look for Darius Slay to go on the podcast when those two players were actively beefing. And then Darius Slay took to social media afterward when he got crushed for it, and he said fans and the media are overblowing it. And I don't know if that's true when Chauncey Gardner-Johnson then went to social media and made it clear he wasn't necessarily thrilled about it.
And on the podcast, he said, you know, when you're going to do all that talking, eventually you got to back it up. That's garbage.
So Darius Slay said that on the podcast about his team.
Yes.
About Chauncey Gardner-Johnson.
Yeah.
And he said this on the podcast of Micah Parsons.
On Micah Parsons' process.
Who was saying that Chauncey Gardner-Johnson had not been playing well. So basically, Darius Slay sided with Parsons. Like
Affirmed.
It's a messy situation from afar, Shefty.
Yeah, I don't think that's the wisest course of action. Again, I mean, it's amazing, what people do these days, and I'm sure Darius doesn't see it, but if he took a step back and he had Chauncey Gardner-Johnson go on Micah's podcast and talk about him, he probably wouldn't have been very happy about it, right? So I go back to what I told my daughter when she was born, like, treat people the way you want to be treated. Would Darius Slay want to be treated like that? Pretty simple. I would say, my guess is no. Maybe he wouldn't. He's going to say he wouldn't mind it, but again, I don't think that's necessarily the right thing to do.
I'm a little surprised, Adam, at, again, the effort on Sunday, and effort was being even used by coaches and players alike. It's unacceptable, the way this team's playing right now, and to get dominated by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers like that. How eye-opening do you think that is across the league, and maybe the people you speak to, about how the Eagles are playing right now?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, and we talked about this last week, I said to you, when Tampa lost at home to Denver, that was going to be a bad thing for the Philadelphia Eagles because Tampa is a good team. And good teams don't play games like that 2 weeks in a row. And when they go out and get embarrassed, typically the next week, if they're a quality team, they respond. And I knew, anybody knew, like it's some groundbreaking revelation, that Tampa was going to come out and play an A game. And that's exactly what happened. But I think what was a little eye-opening was just the ease at which they had with the Eagles that day, offensively, defensively. Like, they did whatever they wanted to do that day. And, Philadelphia has been missing its wide receivers. It's a tough spot. They haven't started fast. When you don't start fast, you fall behind. There's a whole litany of reasons and excuses we could give as to why they looked the way they did. The fact of the matter is they played 4 games. They're 2-2, right? They're 2-2?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And it could have been better, it could have been worse, but they're 2-2 for a reason. And they've been an average football team through the first 4 weeks. That's what it is, and there's a lot of work to get done. And the other thing I was thinking also is, how many times did we have the conversation during the offseason when everybody was all excited about the Eagles, and I said to you, you tell me how many times I said this, the one thing that I'm a little worried about, concerned about, is what if Jayden Daniels is what everybody says he is?
Yep. I absolutely believe that's scary. It has scared me since the day they drafted him.
Yep. And, again, the line that people use to me, and I don't think I think I brought up on your show no less than a half dozen times this offseason. I said there were any number of personnel people around the league that compared Jayden Daniels to Lamar Jackson to me, and they said he's Lamar Jackson 2.0. That's what they said. I heard that from a few highly respected, knowledgeable football people. And so the Commanders drafted Lamar Jackson 2.0, it looks like. It looks like, after 4 games.
Right.
Now, there's still a lot of time, but if he is what he's looked like he is for the 4 games, and what other people think he is after the 4 games, Well, that's now in the division, and that's going to be a problem for the next decade plus.
Shefty, I know you don't win.
That's an issue.
I know you don't win a Super Bowl on paper, right? So the whole on-paper conversation, when we talk about the roster and how talented they are, we won't find that out until they actually play. But I don't think the Eagles have played anywhere close to what we expect them. Even in the games that they won, the New Orleans game, the offense did not look good. So who does that ultimately fall on, right? They're 2-2, and I don't feel supremely confident about a team that we had winning the division and winning around 11 or 12 games.
No, and I wouldn't feel confident about them right now either. They have a lot of work to do, as we talked about. But, again, it's October 2nd. They're on their bye, an early bye, which I don't love, but they're on their bye. And there's a lot of football left, a lot of roller coaster ride left. And there is plenty of time to get this turned around, plenty of time. And there's plenty of time for them to separate themselves, differentiate themselves, and then pull ahead in that division. And if they do that, then great. And if they don't, then obviously then they're going to have to figure out what it's going to take to get there. Again, I'm not hitting a panic button yet, but there are alarming signs.
When you talk about there being plenty of time, and I understand it's true, last year we kept hearing that during the 1-7 slide down the stretch, that, there's plenty of time. They'll work this out. They'll pull out of the nosedive. Do you feel differently about this team because of the coordinators? Do you feel differently this time around because they've got Saquon Barkley? Like, what would give you optimism? Because I think people are looking for some optimism.
Well, I'll give you some optimism. The optimism is that they played the last 2 games without A.J. Brown. They played the last game without Devontae Smith. When you're playing a game without both those guys, then that's going to be an enormously challenging environment to play in. They've played 2 road games, 2 tough road games in New Orleans and Tampa. And again, I come back to this. They won the game in New Orleans to their credit. They deserved in the end to win. But that was always going to be a tough place to win. I don't care they didn't play great. They won the game. That's all that matters. Because if they had lost that game and they're in the bye at 1-3, coming off 3 straight losses, forget about it. That to me was the nightmare scenario, and they avoided that. So it's 2-2. You start over. You're 500. You come back. I presume that when they get back, A.J. Brown's going to be back. I presume that when they get back, Devontae Smith is going to be back. I presume that when they get back, Lane Johnson's going to be back. Like, their guys are back. And you would hope and think that their brand of football will be back and that they could start ripping off some wins and stacking them up. That's the hope. Now, we'll see whether or not they can do it. The team has looked a little discombobulated to me at times here. So, and maybe that's to be expected with 2 new coordinators, and you have to kind of work these things out. But they were not as impressive through the 4 games as you would like to think that they would have been.
Shefty, time to hand in your homework assignment if you did it. Last week we asked you to do some digging, and we're wondering if you did. Nick Sirianni said it was a collaborative effort, the play calling, and he admitted to making some in-game play calls despite Kellen Moore calling the majority of the play calls. And you yourself said if you gave Kellen Moore truth serum, he would probably be upset with that. So did you do some digging on this, and is it accurate?
Yeah, I did not. And I didn't because it's the life that we live. So I didn't do my homework, so I get a failing grade.
Yeah, you did not pass.
Inevitably, you're distracted by the 100 injuries that were coming up.
Of course.
And quarterback stuff and Devontae Adams and I get an F for today on my homework. Which, by the way, I was always very good at getting my homework done. It's the first time I haven't done my homework in a very long time.
I thought that's why you went to Michigan, because you didn't do your homework. I'm just saying.
Good, John.
I got to ask you this though. As far as where Vic Fangio says, when questioned about why weren't they pressing more against the receivers of Tampa, he explains to us yesterday that his D-backs have the option to do that, and they weren't doing it. They have the option in the scheme to press more, to get up there and get up close and personal, and that they weren't doing it. So to me, is that insubordination? Is that guys that are afraid of getting smoked? What does that say to you? And is it a major red flag that coaches come out and tell us that?
I think certain coaches trust certain players to make certain decisions on the field, and they trust that they're going to do the right thing. Coaches can't do everything for them.
Sure.
Ultimately, players have to make these plays in the end. So you could tell them to do a certain thing, but ultimately they're out there, and they're going to have to make a judgment based off instincts and experience and instruction, and that's what they did. And they looked overmatched. They looked like they couldn't slow down that team last week. Like the Buccaneers looked like they could do whatever they wanted, whether the players were or weren't following orders. Tampa Bay overpowered them.
Schefter, how important are statement wins? And what I mean is when they come out of the bye week against Cleveland, and John and I painted this scenario, if Jake Elliott has to kick a 60-yard field goal
to win it at the end,
to win 17-16, how good are you ultimately feeling about an Eagles team that, again, we had NFC Championship appearance conversations about, barely beating a team that seems to be heading in the wrong direction? Do statement wins matter in the locker room?
Well, I don't even view a game against the Cleveland Browns as a chance for a statement win. Like, it's a chance for a win. If Jake Elliott kicks that field goal to win the game 17-16 and they win, fine. You put it in the column and you go on to the next week. Fine. Not a big deal. Like, are you going to be critical of them for not being more impressed? Fine. The problem is if Jake Elliott misses that field goal and they lose 16-14. That's the problem. Now you've come out of your bye week, you get your guys back, and you lose to a team that shouldn't be playing with you. That's the problem. You win, you do whatever you want, pick them apart for the lack of impressive way that they've done that. But, I'm not. If I'm an Eagles fan, I don't care about a statement win. I mean, I want them to look as good as possible. So, to me, that's a statement win. Like, you just want to be stacking wins rather than statement wins until you get to the point later in the season where you're playing your best football. That's the hope.
All right, Schefter, last thing for you. We appreciate your time as always. The seat, how warm is it for Sirianni?
I don't know that it's any warmer now than it was at the end of the year. I think everybody always felt like this year, this team had to play well. They had to have a strong season. Otherwise, this organization was going to have to evaluate everything and make some tough decisions. I don't know that it's gotten any warmer or less warm. Like, is there anything different? Do you feel the seat is warmer now because of this?
Yes.
I don't.
Decidedly.
Well, and I was not in favor of him coming back. John was, and so John is now.
I'm getting over. I'm ready to join the cult because it's
cult.
I cannot trust him on game day.
Yeah. Well, listen. Again, he's going to have 13 games to state his case. So, the 13 games to tell you that he deserves to stay, he belongs, and that he's the right man for the job. We got an election a month from now, and Nick Sirianni's about to enter his runoff here.
Yep.
Here it is.
Schefter, man, we appreciate it as always. Enjoy yourself.
Thanks, Adam.
Enjoy another slate of football this weekend, and we'll talk to you next week.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. Have a great week, and we will talk next Wednesday.
Thanks, Schefter.